Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start. Um, Welcome, Sidney Russell. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are located in the world. This is interview number 55. Our guest tonight is Sidney Russell. She is located in California, in Estados Unidos, and she completed a two-way crossing of the Catalina Channel, covering 64.6 kilometers away. So this is something unbelievable. It's a great achievement, and we are here to hear from Sydney about this adventure. So, welcome, Sydney Russell, and this is our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Sydney. So, a little background. How do you start practicing swimming?
I was a competitive gymnast and had a uh, really bad broken ankle. And in the process of recovery, my younger brother was a swimmer, and I joined the swim team to rehabilitate my ankle. And the coach would bring us out in open water, and we would do practice in open water. So I started swimming at a really young age.
Wow. Okay, so great. Like for an injury, you enter to the swimming world. Okay.
Yeah, really lucky.
Okay. Okay, let's move a little bit. How do you start coaching? Because I understand that you are currently a coaching, right?
I am, yeah. I kind of fell into coaching really naturally. Just I would lead group open water swims, and people would come up to me. Hey, could you look at my form? Could you see how I'm swimming? And I would just give them advice about how I did whatever distance swim I was doing. And after I swam Catalina the first time, I ended up with a pretty bad shoulder injury and I couldn't swim. And so instead of just removing myself from the community, I decided to fall into it a little bit further. And I started coaching masters and in the pool. And then I started also coaching open water masters. So we have a circuit. I do like a circuit workout for swimmers in open water. So they get a chance to swim intervals in a safe environment. And then I would later start coaching marathon swims shortly after that. So just kind of just fell into it very naturally. I enjoy it. It sort of kept me involved in the community, being able to help other people do their what they're planning on doing, their big goals and everything.
Nice, and interesting because probably this is familiar to many of us that somehow we get injured and it happened that we need to stop, but that for you were like an opportunity to start doing coaching.
Yeah,
So we continue staying in touch with the community, but in another angle, for another side, right? And
yeah,
yeah, so that's great.
yeah.
Okay, so moving forward, open water swimming career. So in this point, please talk a little bit about how do you start your open water swimming career? Where was your first, for example, competition, and how do you start increasing your volume and your adventure in this area?
Sure. So like I said, I started when I was probably 10. I mean, I always swam at the beach, but I started competing when I was really young. And my very first open water swim was a race. It was a 1 mile race, and I actually wasn't prepared at all. And the water felt horribly cold, and I ended up being rescued from a lifeguard and failing that immediately. Just as a kid, that's like heartbreaking, your first attempt at that. And after that, I continued to get in and swim and do those little 1 mile races. And I stayed in open water even when I moved to different places. I lived in New York for a while, and I would swim in the river and different lakes. And Maine, I would swim in the water, the beaches in Maine. And when I came back to California, I missed it. And I begged my younger brother to come swim with me. And we signed up. I had just had my daughter and I missed swimming. So I signed up to do a 1 mile swim. And I had to fall back into it. And so just started pushing my distance and kept going. And a couple years later, I had my son and realized that I really wanted to be out in the water. And because I love the freedom of the ocean. I love being in the water. I love seeing the fish. I love feeling like I can get to places that other people wouldn't be able to get to unless you were swimming. It's, they're so freeing, to escape gravity. So, but I started really pushing my distances during the pandemic, which I think a lot of people did. So we were just going and swimming 10Ks weekly for fun with no agenda. And shortly thereafter, I don't know if you've heard of the Badwater Challenge. It's like it's a run in Southern California. I'm not an ultra runner, but they did a virtual challenge. It was basically swim 140 miles in a month. I don't know how many kilometers. It's a lot. It's a lot. 35, 40 miles a week. So I did that. I was like, wow, this is great. So then I was like, I'll swim around Coronado because hopefully I can do it. And turns out Coronado was like a 4 hour swim. Like I need to go more than that. So it just like snowballed. I was like, I need to see what I can do. I need to go a little further. Can I go further? Can I go longer? That's always been what was important to me. Just how much farther can I go? So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I get an idea of how this started and how this become like a larger distance. And during the pandemic, also it was a time for jumping into open water swimming, even if we don't have let's say a goal, a clear goal, but just to have like freedom, to feel the freedom of the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move. Achievements and work behind them. Please share with us some of your prior long distance swimming, meaning prior to this Catalina double.
Yeah. Well, I had done some shorter, like I said, around Coronado Island, and that was my first official marathon swim. And I started doing a few in the 12-mile range, but then I did Catalina for the first time. And that's actually when I realized that I wanted to do the double. I swam across the Catalina Channel and I got out and I was nursing a bad shoulder. And even in that moment, I just knew I wanted to turn back and swim again. And I sort of left that, and that's when the injury, and I sort of stopped. But after I rehabbed my shoulder, I went and did the length of Tahoe, which is about 21 miles. And then a couple other ones along the way. And then I was really set on doing a two-way crossing of the Anacapa Channel, but the Santa Barbara. So it's Anacapa is an island off the Santa Barbara. And there and back is about 25 miles. So I attempted that, and I had just a whole stream of things that went wrong, and I ended up DNFing and went towards doing around Angel Island, where you can see San Francisco and the bridge and Alcatraz, and it's just a beautiful scenic view. And I use that as a qualifier for my English channel. And so then I started training to do the English Channel in the July the next year, and that swim was pretty challenging. I missed, you say you have a window, and we missed the window, and I ended up having to
Mm,
swim in it 4 hours, and my swim was about 17 hours, and that's uh, really that was really eye-opening, like knowing that I could push through such terrible conditions. And even though I wasn't sure if I was going to land, I kept going. A couple, maybe 6 weeks later after that, I went back to repeat the two-way Anacapa, and I was successful. So that was the confidence I needed to sort of pull the trigger on that double Catalina swim, is that Anacapa crossing and the English Channel crossing. It really gave me the power to know that I could to do it.
mm. So many challenging situations around
Yeah.
these long distance swimming routes, and also the conditions that you just mentioned about the English Channel that was outside of your hands, and
Yeah.
that it's difficult to handle. And those, so at the end, those difficult conditions prepare you for this double
Yeah.
at the end.
Mentally.
Do you think that?
Mentally. Yes.
Mental.
Yeah.
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 So
It's
good,
like you're handed
good point.
an unknown, and you either have the option to get out or to stay in. And, it's really easy to say, this is too hard and I don't want to swim an unknown amount of time. So
Mhm.
if I stay in, I was like, is my body okay? And if the answer is yes, then I was okay to keep going. So it was, and all of those, like Angel Island and Anacapa and English Channel, the big thing that those swims have in common is just the really strong, either unpredictable current changes, or English Channel is very predictable, but it's so strong. And so frequently on those swims, it was all about, I couldn't fight the ocean. I had to do what it gave. I had to be okay with what the ocean gave me and be patient with the ocean. So,
Mhm. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Okay, and about the temperatures of these 3 or 4 races that you just mentioned, how do
um,
you rate them?
the Angel Island was the qualifier, so it was sub 60. I think, was it 16? It was cold, and then the English Channel was okay. I was surprised because it was early July, so I was expecting it to be cold, and it was quite reasonable. It was very comfortable. Same with the Anacapa swim, which again, it's typically a really cold swim, but that day the ocean was like, you can have nice. So I was like, okay, I'll take it.
Okay, 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 great. Okay, so moving forward, how do you prepare for these 64.6 kilometers two-way crossing of the Catalina Channel, having in mind that you have a previous injury, shoulder injury? So, how do you prepare for these kind of kilometers?
So I no junk miles for sure. I made sure that everything I did was quality, and if I felt like my form was going, I would either use some tools to adjust, or I would just get out and call it a day. I focused on having a very core driven stroke. If you're not rotating, you're pulling too hard on your wrists and your shoulders. And so I tried really hard to make sure that I was getting the most out of my rotation to take the stress off of my shoulders. The first thing that I did, one, I like to do swims in July because the water can warm up during the summer. So that forces me to train throughout the winter. So then all of my training is done in really cold, sub 60, sometimes low 50s. And so I'm doing all these cold swims in preparation for a swim that will, be a little bit warmer. But what I did was I started with just getting a 10K base and being at the point where going and swimming a 10K was my normal. I go out and swim a 10K several times a week, and it felt okay, and I felt okay, and I would go from there and start doing these big bulk weeks where I was swimming multiple hour swims throughout the week, like every day, to the point where, really pushing my limits and I would actually later change my training to more longer distance swim. So I was doing like 5 hour, 4-3, and then it'd be like, but all the water temperature was like 55 or lower. And it ended up being almost too much. And then I would go to doing 8, and then a 12-hour swim, and then another 12-hour swim with another 4-hour swim. And then my last long training swims, I did 2 10-hour swims. But I also do, I use like a periodization. So I'll have like a recovery week, and then I'll kind of build up my volume throughout the month, and I'll have like bigger stuff towards the end of the month, and then come back and recover. Because I really, between the calorie deficit and just the mass in the sleep deprivation, the massive amount of training and the inflammation on the body, like I really needed that recovery the weeks after the swim, and then I'd go back to what I was doing. And it is interesting. I had an idea. Not a lot of people have done. There's a lot of people have done these swims that are over 24 hours, but there's not a lot written, or there's not a lot of guidance. And I had talked to Forrest Nelson and Nora Toledano about what to do, like what's some guidance, and they had both given me some guidance moving forward, and I kind of took a little bit from both of what they said and did what worked for me. And then I guess it worked. So it's wild to think back all the swimming that I did do, and all the moments where I think, oh, maybe I'm not doing enough. Should I be doing more? But I'll say I didn't have any injuries the whole time I was training, and I didn't get injured on the swim. And I feel like that's the biggest success to me, on top of, short of completing the swim.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, I guess a sense of that you kind of built or designed your own program for this swim, for this very very long swim. Also taking information or advice from other master coaches, let's say that. But since your previous experience, you also let's say listen or to your body, and maybe add some things that nobody tells you, but for you makes sense, like recovery or the week of rest or the muscle and that stuff, and also the exercises to protect your shoulder, the ones that you just mentioned. So I think those are interesting points because you designed it like something that worked for you, and at the end it's like the success is not only completed but also you don't get injured during this attempting, right? So this completion of the Catalina double. So that's double success, I must say. So that's great. And that's super because sometimes people go to this kind of challenges with having in mind that, okay, let's I will have an injury and I have to recover from that, and that's part of the process. And but that's not like the idea, right? So the better
No.
is to get injured during this and prepare to avoid that the if at all possible, right? So that I
Yeah.
think that's yes.
I also worked really closely with sports massage therapist, a chiropractor, and a acupuncturist, and I felt like that also really helped. Keep my muscles loose
Mhm.
and make sure they're healthy, and so that I feel like if people were doing, I would recommend that as well because they would like even if I was like this kind of bothers me, like do this exercise instead, or let's see if we can get that to loosen up. So
Okay, so that's another good point to consider.
yeah.
Great, thank you very much. I love this point. So let's move. If you can establish stages for the Catalina two-way crossing, what they could be.
So I started during the day, and that was like a really deliberate choice on my part, just based off of some other points others had made about swimming into the night twice. I kind of wanted to just start in the day, swim through the entire night, and then finish in the day. I wanted to see the end. And so, with that in mind, you have like the beginning, you start your swim, and I think that first section until the night set was, it was about 9 hours or so. And it was just getting a groove and swimming in that section. And I'm about, 2/3 across the channel the first time. And that I think is the beginning. When the sun set, that section, it was the turnaround point. So leading into the island, the turnaround and turning around, I would group those all together. And then as I'm leaving, you have the night. And so that's all I would focus on, or that's all you have to focus on is the night. And it's several hours in pitch black. It's dark. There's no moon. The cloud covers are covering the stars. You can't tell the sky from the ocean. And then you have the dawn and like waiting for dawn and the moments after dawn, and then just the last part, which is the finale, or just the finish in the afternoon. So I feel like the swim really broke up into about 5 different sections for me, and the beginning and the afternoon, it was like the first 2/3 and then the last 2/3, or the last 2/3. So it was interesting how that, as far as the channel is concerned, if I was breaking up into thirds.
Okay. And how do you prepare for the low temperatures of Catalina two-way crossing? Because I guess Catalina is less than 15 degrees Celsius, right?
It can be. It was 20, so it was okay. it was it was okay, but like I said, I did all my training in the winter, so it didn't. It to me, it didn't matter what temperature it was going to be because I did all of my training in the winter and I was ready for that. And I got to the point where I didn't even feel comfortable swimming in a pool. I would overheat swimming in a pool.
Okay.
In the winter time, I would even go up to San Francisco where it's even colder than San Diego and get some swimming in done there as well. So I just swim throughout the winter,
And
and I'm fortunate to be in a place where the water is cold enough for me to train like that.
okay, when you say in winter, what is the lowest temperature that you can find on winter?
Um, in San Diego last year, the lowest was like around 55, maybe 53. And I want to see, don't know what that would be in Celsius. Um, like 12.
12. Okay. So
So
That's
doing
your
most
temperature
5 hours. Yeah, in the wintertime.
in the winter time. Okay, so in 12, 5 hours, the conditions where you train, and that helps when you go to a warmer temperature, let's say that 2 or 3
Mhm.
or 4 points over that. Okay, great. So that's like a strategy, right?
Yeah, like when I would do because I would do a 5 hour swim, and I'd go home, I'd come back, I'd do it again the next day, I'd go home, I'd do it again the next day. And each day I'm a little bit more tired. The water feels a little bit more cold. And but my body gets to a point where it can kind of find like a thermostasis, and I can regulate if I'm swimming at a certain pace and I'm not stopping too much. Um, but I really feel like that prepared me for that. Because at first, when I did the first crossing over, I was fine. It was like you said, 20 or even 21. It was very comfortable. But as I got tired on the return, that's when it started to feel cold to me.
Okay. Okay, great. So interesting points. Any complicated situation you faced, or and how do you resolve it during the Catalina two-way crossing?
Uh, so I had two main things that happened on my swim. The first one was um, the reason you swim Catalina to mainland is because the currents are going against the currents. So going out, you end up swimming against a bunch of currents, and it makes it very, very choppy. It feels like the water is hitting in your face. You're swimming in a washing machine. And so I swam in this turbulent washing machine type water for 12 hours. And when the sun set, I became incredibly nauseous. And I've actually never experienced that before, ever on a swim. I crew other swimmers all the time. I'm kayaking or I'm on boats all the time. So this is the first time I had ever felt nauseous from swimming. I think it was a combination of just being in that turbulent water for so long, and then the night hit and it was still really bumpy. And my kayaker had some medicine, and I took it, didn't work, and I had to take it again, like a little bit of time, some time in class to try it again, and that solved it. So just having the right kind of medicine on the boat did what it needed to do, and I was absolutely shocked. And by the time I got to the island, I just felt like a new person. I felt relieved. I was so worried about the turnaround, and that was the best part for me. The second part was after swimming for 20 hours or so, I started asking where the sun was and when is the sun going to come up? And Mike Acker thought the sun was coming up at 5, and it turns out the sunrise was at 6, and it turns out that it was extremely overcast, so the sun never came. And I sort of fell into this deep sadness while I was swimming, and to the point where I was really cold, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And the boat captain saw, I don't know if you know what a mola mola is, like a sunfish. Have you seen?
Mola.
It's this
Okay.
mola mola, it's this giant, awkward, weird looking fish, and they can be gigantic. And we saw one on the swim, and I was like, he brought me over to look at this fish. I was like, doesn't matter, I don't care. And it took so that was a really big turning point. So I had to like come to terms with either I'm going to have to get out, or I need to find a way to get out of this sadness. It can't be sad and swim. I had to climb out of the hole. And so it took me getting mad at something one of my crewmates said, like, okay, fine. And at that point I switched from being deeply sad to just kind of angry, and I started fueling myself and doing like micro sprinting. So I would sprint really hard for about 20 seconds, and then I would back off. And then I would be like, okay, we're gonna sprint really hard again. And my other kayaker was like, the mind follows the body. She kept saying the mind follows the body. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but we'll go with that. And so like, okay. And I would sprint again. I'm like, okay, the mind the mind, I gotta build up the confidence. I'm so tired. I build up the confidence to sprint a little bit. And I'd sprint for about 20 seconds and I'd back off. And I don't know how many times that I ended up doing this, but it was in the last six hours of the swim where I was doing these micro sprints. And that's what I had to do to get out of that hole. And it was that or get out of the water. And so that was really eye-opening for me to realize that I needed to do that.
Okay, so that's very hard. 6 hours doing that.
Yeah. After swimming for 22 hours.
Okay, so 22 hours of that normal, like let's call
Regular
that
swimming, and then
regular
it was the last 6 hours where the sprinting started to happen.
sprinting. Okay, do you have any idea of that could happen, or it just something that you have to adjust at that moment?
I think that in general that I'm that kind of swimmer. Like it's almost like if it's too calm, I kind of get lazy and swim, meander through the water. And it's when the conditions pick up where I start to really embrace it, and I try to match the water. And because the water at the end, it was a little windy, but it wasn't, it was okay, it was fine. And so what I had to do was match that energy, the energy, and because there was no energy, I had to create it. And I think that I knew that from those other swims, because the English Channel, I had to sprint the last 4 hours of my swim to make it 400 meters so I could get to shore. It took 4 hours to swim 400 meters. So in this swim, because the ocean wasn't doing anything, there was no reason for anything to happen. I had to come up with that energy. And so that's where I was, getting mad at my crew because I wanted to know how much further, and like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to figure it out then. So
That's great, and well, that's our something. How do you resolve it? So this is the answer on exactly to the questions. And how do you resolve it? Because you have to resolve those complicated situations somehow, and you did it super well. That's great. Okay, so let's move to our next question. Your crew, who they
yeah.
are?
So I had a pretty big, so in the past I had been really hesitant to have a big crew, but I had so much confidence going into the swim. I thought, okay, I'm gonna have support swimmers. I want them. I want a team. I want them there. And so I had 3 kayakers, which is Angela Lee, Steve Sutton, and Rachel Wetterland. I had three. Rachel also supports swim, but I had 3 support swimmers: is Melissa Strong, Astolfo Ferragrino, and Melissa Strong. And I also had my crew chief, Summer Wesson, and I had a backup crew chief who was Michelle Bark, and they all were sharp and on top of it. They made sure that people were watching me. One of my fears of swimming is that someone's not going to be watching. Like, they're going to be hanging out or they're going to be chatting. They're not going to be watching the swimmer, because these swims are so dangerous and so big. And it's important to me that the crew is, sharp and watching the swimmer and making sure everything is safe. And I would look up at the boat and I would always see my team there. My team was always available and ready to go the whole time. And that was so meaningful for me. And it was fun. And I enjoyed having them there, even if it didn't seem like it at times. So
Yes, absolutely. Because we are talking about a channel that has or may have sharks. Definitely have, but
I saw one.
it was just saw it.
Yes.
Oh, let's we have some we have the question. Let's have that like a bonus track. What happened with that encountering?
It was okay. So it was like it was towards the end, like the last couple hours, they were starting to throw in more support swimmers, and I had they threw in Summer and Rachel jump in the water. And I saw a video after. So Rachel swims over to, this is the story. So Rachel swims over to Summer. It's like, do you see that? And she's like, yeah, I see that. Is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. And they just start swimming. And I look down like, oh, guys, I think I'm seeing things. And in my mind, it didn't look, because the perspective of the water made it look a lot smaller than it actually was. I think it was about like 8 or 9 feet. And it was right at the surface when they jumped in. And so I looked and I was like, I think I see a shark. But that was just like it. I didn't react. I didn't panic. I didn't start swimming. I just sat there and watched it and hung out for a couple minutes, and then it just swam away, and it was okay. So it's they're out there, and people panic, but they don't want us, and it just wanted to see what was going on. It was actually quite majestic to be able to see this pretty close. I've never seen one that close and that clear before.
Right. And you don't get panic, and you didn't like scream, nothing. So you just see it, and then you keep.
I see a shark.
Okay, it's a shark. It's a shark. Then you start swimming.
And they're like, "Oh, right, keep swimming." Okay, and I just kept swimming.
Wait. Do you have in Spanish is nervios de acero. In English could be like a very good temper or something. So
Shark.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it had to have been a juvenile, and I really just think it came over to see what was going on. Just it wasn't swimming fast. It wasn't acting suspicious. It just what's happening, and then it
Just checking.
just checking.
Who is here? Cindy. Okay.
And nobody else was worried. There was observers and the boat captain, and like, oh, that's cool, and it was fine. I think, if I had panicked or someone else had panicked, I could see it maybe responding to that panic.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was very calm and cool, and I actually feel so blessed and fortunate that I got that opportunity to see that in that moment when I was struggling with this swim, and it just reminded me of how beautiful being out there really is.
Yes. So that it's like not like a good moment, or you're lucky, like a lucky person to see that. Not all people in the world can have that opportunity. So considering from that angle.
Yeah.
Okay, so great experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move. Come back, get back to our agenda, because that was like the bonus. How to be efficient when practicing open water swimming for long distances. And I have to add here, and also not hurting or injuring yourself.
Yeah. Well, I went to chiropractor frequently. They do like active release therapy where they break up adhesions in the muscles. I also did a lot of acupuncture to try to release that, and like cupping. I also would do lots of stretching and some band work with like resistant bands.
Mm-hmm.
In swimming, I had a friend of mine sort of look at my stroke because I was telling her, oh, I'm having some wrist pain. Can you see what's going on? And she said, I think it's your rotation. So focus on that. And so what was happening is I wasn't rotating fully. And so I was putting a lot of pressure on my wrists and my elbows. And so what I would do is really, really focus on keeping streamline and having that rotation and letting that hip help bring my arms forward. taking the weight off, and that helped a lot. And so sometimes during my training swims, I would bring paddles along because the paddles would force me to sort of it would take the stress off of my arms and my wrists and allow me to focus on the rotation. And so having really good core and hip driven focus stroke is essential to keeping your shoulders. The second I'm not rotating properly, all of my upper body starts to ache. And the other thing that I have done over the years is try to reduce my stroke rate. So when I first did Catalina, I think my stroke rate was like 70 plus. And I did have a high stroke rate on the English Channel, but it was because I had to push so hard to finish on that swim. But I actually have focused really hard the last couple of years to do more distance per stroke and reduce my stroke rate to like 60-ish, maybe 62. And then the other thing that I do a lot is breath control. And so I'll breathe every 4 to 6 strokes the entire time I'm swimming. So that way I don't have to I don't have to turn my head as much. I don't have to rotate as much. And I can focus more on having that good body position.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great advices. Okay, so can you share with us 5 or 2, the number that you want, because time is it's running, of your favorite exercises to warm up, something that you usually like to do or you think or you feel that helps you?
So I like to kind of warm up my hips. So I'll do different lunges or just stretches with my hip flexors. I also will stretch my triceps because they'll get quite sore, and so do a lot of tricep stretches. And then just like a full body twist, shaking out or arm circles. But then when I'm actually swimming, I'll periodically turn over for backstroke to try to stretch out my chest. Before, as I'm swimming, I'll swim a little bit and I'll turn over and I'll do 500 yards of backstroke, and then I'll turn back and I'll do it again until I feel like I've really opened up and I stretch out. Or if I feel like I'm starting to close in, I'll do the same thing where I turn around, do backstroke to try to open up again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great advices. Thank you very much, Sidney. Okay, so we are at the end of our interview. So thanks a lot for this time, Sidney Russell. Final words for the global open water swimming community, and a piece of advice for any person who wants to start in this sport.
The thing that I'll say and have said to lots of people is that I think that anybody can be a marathon swimmer, and it doesn't matter what their lifestyle is. There's no one way to do any of this. There's no perfect equation. There's a solution for everybody and their lifestyle. And if somebody wants to do it, there's a way. If you have kids, if you have a demanding job, there's always a way that you can do it. I truly believe that.
Great. Okay, so time for me to close this interview. I must say once again, thank you very much, Sidney, for your time here and for all the information and experience you have shared with us. I think that this is a great information that can help anyone who wants to swim any distance, and if they want to swim like Catalina, so they have a lot of advices here. So
Yeah.
thanks for that, and also thanks for all the audience that can see this interview. And let's keep with interviews around the world with swimmers around the world. So thank you, Sidney, and all the success for your next journeys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye for now. Thank you, Sydney.
Good night.
Yeah.